So welcome everyone to this session of Being Celtic, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times. And I'm your host, Emer Stassen. And today, in this third episode, I'm speaking with my dear friend, my role model and colleague from times past, Anna Bell. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm so glad that you're here to share you and your journey, all that you've been through, well, aspects of what you've been through. So would you like to introduce who you are to our listeners?
Yes, thank you. So my name's Annabelle and I am a coach, an NLP trainer and mindfulness teacher. And as of very recently, also an author of a book called Roots for Growth, which is about resilience, about mindful living. So mindfulness and ways of being mindful in life, and also about growing through change. And it's kind of come about almost all by itself, and it was a case of, I feel like I've got a book in me and I want to write it, and that's what's been happening for me recently, that I've brought it into the world and really enjoyed doing so, and it was quite a learning process as well. So it's great to be able to talk about that today and how it relates to the subject of the podcast.
Yeah, so much. And we were chatting just before recording about how our paths have been so connected in so many ways, and how much you've been a role model for me in what you're doing. And it's like we're kind of interweaving in our paths all along the way,
Yeah.
which is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, would you like to share, like, where would you like to start with that journey up to the culmination of your book, which just is so beautiful and gorgeous. Loving it.
Thank you. I'm really pleased with the end result, but then I am a little bit biased, but it's lovely to have brought it along. And I suppose when you asked me about this, I had a particular, two memories came to mind actually. One was really early on when we were working together in a corporate environment. It was you, me, and our friend Gay came out of a room. I think I maybe had been running a workshop, and it was very early days, and I was quite nervous, but buzzing from running it. And we came out into the by the lifts on the fifth floor. I'm sure you know where I mean. And the three of us were all like chatting away and talking about things that we don't normally talk about at work. And I had such a sense of shared experience with you both. And I think we were all saying, it feels like we've known each other forever. And we'd only known each other a few months, I think, at that point. And that sense of, oh, there's something happening here, something special, and that sense of kindred spirits, who we all had our own unique things we wanted to do, and we had a lot of fun. We always have as well. And particularly there was a moment we both went, well, I had done NLP training and you went on to do it with Leslie, and there was a moment in the room that you talked about being at Newgrange with your son, and Newgrange being, and I'll try and pronounce it, Bruna Bonye, is that right?
Yeah,
Bonye.
yeah. Bruna
It was,
Bonia.
you described being inside the ancient monument, which is thousands of years old, and all the carvings and chambers. And you talked about triple spirals that covered the entrance. And you lifted your foot and showed me what it was like. There was a shaft of light came in where they show you what it's like when the solstice happens. And you actually saw a beam of light in the room, and you were going like that with your foot. And I had hairs on the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. And I'd just come home from Skye, and I had been looking up, history of places with triple spiral carvings and the symbolism and everything. And I thought, gosh, this is amazing, talking about things like that, and just really following the path that as opportunities present themselves, even if it's a moment of learning or making a bigger leap, as you and I both have, and Guy has as well, to leave what we were doing and follow a path to something else, which feels, the word I would describe as more like a calling. It's like, this is what I meant to be doing, and really getting to know myself and other people and how to support them, and that's all happened since then.
Wow. And I'd forgotten that. I love that reminder. I remember been in the room, and I'd forgotten that, how I was describing that with the shaft of light in the room in that time. That's gorgeous.
And then we went, well, what would it be, about 3 or 4 years later? And I remember you did it again when the light came in, and I thought, oh, there's that that moment again. And I did have kind of pinch me moments when the three of us were standing there, and I was thinking, we would never have known back then that we would actually travel there together and go inside the chamber and listen to the history and the stories and really feel it. That you can feel it under your feet, the sense of time passing, and everyone who's passed through there for all those thousands of years.
Yeah, it really is. It's so amazing and powerful, and those moments that we've shared together, and then that so many others have as well. And Newgrange, it's on my mind a lot. I feel so connected to that place and the land. And as you talk about just feeling your feet on the ground inside that chamber, it's so magical, isn't it? It's almost beyond words in ways. And what a gorgeous trip we had back 2 years ago now, is it? When we went there on tour from Scotland to Ireland, back to my mammy's house.
Yes. And that was a lovely part of it as well, to meet your mum and sit and chat around the table and drink tea and drink more tea and have cake.
And more cake as well. And then you describe your journey as that being the calling, and you've been a role model for me, because when you left your corporate job, I was still in corporate, and you were one of the first people that I saw, in a similar circle to me, in a similar line, where I thought, wow, she's doing this. She's stepping out and having a life outside, beyond corporate. So I began to realize, so can I, as well as you having introduced me to NLP, neuro linguistic programming, as well. So what's this calling been like for you?
Well, it's funny, as you described that, I take myself back to the time when I realized that I already decided that I was going to leave. And that was leaving a secure job, pretty well paid, knew the environment, knew the people. And I just felt that, partly because of my husband Alan's illness, as you know, he has MS and he's had it for a long time. And it started to feel like there wouldn't be an awful lot longer that I would definitely have the freedom to choose and the freedom to invest time in learning and in that kind of support for other people. So it felt like a limited time offer in a good way that gave me a nudge. And one day, and I can still remember looking up at the high windows at the edge of the office, and it was like the penny dropped, and I went, oh, I've already decided to leave. I'm going to have to do it now. But there was a little kind of wicked grin that went with it. And then I thought, how am I going to do that? Because I'm the main earner in my house, and a mixture of excitement and fear. And I just knew there was no going back. I knew that it was time to do it, or it might just not, I might just never get the chance. And in that moment, from when I committed, things started to happen. I was contacted by someone who used to be my boss. He had someone in his team contact me to do a leadership program. And that's what I love about this as well. We're talking about being Celtic and roots in that, and also that it translates, the work that you and I are talking about translates into leadership. It has now led to a book, and there's a whole range of things that are fun and creative and also serious and soul searching kind of things as well. And that experience of being in a very sort of in between place of, how and when do I do this? And I just decided I'm going to make it work. And I decided if I had to, I would do part-time work. I would have 1 or 2 jobs, lower paid than I was on. And I think that was when I tested my commitment. And I thought, yeah. And when I passed that point, there were more people seemed to come forward to give me advice or an opportunity. And all I'd said was, I'll start with 1 client and I'll build it from there. And I'll commit to leaving. And then I had the opportunity for redundancy, which was a real blessing, because I didn't feel, I had the capability, but I didn't feel I had the capacity to do the work that I had been doing in the corporate environment. My peers were doing 40 hours plus a week, and I admire the work that they were doing. And it just wasn't for me anymore. I just felt like my energy is going into other things, partly by necessity with family life and having teenage kids as they were then as well, and partly from that pull, like a magnetic pull to go and, it's time to do this. And that was 2015. And it was a bit of an adjustment working from home on my own, from knowing hundreds of people and being part of this big sort of organization. And I feel like that's when I got a real sense of my identity as who I am as a whole person, without a job title on it or a department that I belong to. It's, just me. And more recently, and especially after you asked me to talk here today, that sense of where I came from, and it even took me back to my Irish ancestors on both sides, and the journey that they made over to mostly from the west coast of Scotland, and that I've been able to visit Ireland with you and with my family, and that sense of being at home wherever I am has really grown, and it's part of my sense of identity as well.
Wow, that's so beautiful. All of what you share, from the commitment and then the magic that happens once, when you describe the penny dropping, like I can feel it.
You can almost hear it. It was like dunk. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do it.
And that mix of emotions that then arises, isn't it? And that commitment, I'm amazed time and time again, that clear commitment that I'm hearing from you, then the universe responds and these opportunities come along, and maybe we're tested from time to time, and that we can continue on that path and recommit over and over.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And there was a sense of allowing myself to have the choice. So I used to talk about becoming a coach later in life because I had the skills and I'd worked a lot with change and how people go through change. And so the way I describe it is the plan B became the plan A, because it's what I really wanted to do. And now I see that was absolutely what what was for me, and having done it. And it works for family life. I was out going around in Lithgow Loch with my dog this morning, and I've also done a bit of admin, made Alan lunch, and now I'm here with you. And I work almost as many hours, but it doesn't feel like work. Because it's a different way to invest your time, for sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you talk about then your Irish ancestry, and your being Celtic, it's Scottish and Irish ancestry, and coming home to yourself, to you in relation to your identity. So would you like to share more about that?
It's partly through traveling, actually, and noticing how I experience things when I travel. So in simple terms, I do enjoy when we're able to do so. I enjoy the bit where you maybe take off in a plane or set off in the car, usually the car for us, because it's mostly UK based. And that sense of, as the miles pass, it's an opportunity to reflect on life and just be in the moment, wherever we go. Aviemore is a place that we love to go, as you know, and being very present with what's happening around, like going for walks out in nature, being with the kids around the table. And from that, and also from going to India, I went in 2017, and it was the first time I travelled any distance on my own. I'd travelled to London for work before, and that was all really. Everything else I'd done was with, friends or family or couples. And there was a moment when I stepped onto the plane to go in the first part of the flight from Glasgow, and the gap between the terminal building and landing, in the plane. Over the gap, I thought, oh my goodness, I could disappear and nobody would know for quite a long time that I hadn't reached where I'm supposed to go. And it was like I kept going, and my heel landed, and I went, and it's fine. And I actually went, yep, I can do this. And I went, and I had an amazing experience of, that was trainer training, to be able to train other people in NLP and certify them as practitioners. And it was making friends, and to me becoming part of a global community, because there were 30 odd people there. I think there were 4 or 5 of us from the UK and some from other countries. Almost everyone was from India, but from different parts of India. So the chat was about us being tourists, really, like about dialect or how you eat things, or just sharing experiences of what they know and where they come from. And so I felt very included. And from that moment, I really had a sense of being at home wherever I am. And that could be on the way somewhere, like going to Ireland, in the south of Ireland, in Baltimore, in West Cork, where we stayed, and chatting to people from there and from other places. But I think it's when you notice things in a certain way, that's where the shift comes for me. And also that we have enjoyed holidays in places that we have, as later discovered, that we have ancestors, like Cornwall is one. Brittany we've loved to travel to, although not ancestors from there. We do have one, I can't remember, I think it's my dad's great granny, I think, was French. And that sense of, and noticing things like the symbolism, like the spirals and the words on the map. I find
where this is from, actually, this mug.
So it is. in Breton language. Yeah,
that wasn't intentional, but there with the spirals and everything.
yeah. So just feeling an affinity with certain places and feeling at home anyway. And it sounds very sort of symbolic or abstract, enjoying the journey wherever we go, but it is about that, I think. And even comes through in creativity and writing, just going with the flow of whatever's happening and being in the moment. That helps me thinking about the future and anticipating Alan will his health has declined a lot and it will continue to. So being in the moment is very important for me to live the life that I intend to and enjoy it while things are as they are now. So that's a big part of me being into mindfulness and teaching that to other people, that being present can give freedom even in challenging times, like the world is just now.
Like right now, that's just what I was thinking, that this is exactly what we need right now. Of course, always, but right now, there's never been a better time. And it reminds me as well of, for my NLP project, you were one of my role models, one of my exemplars, and it was all around slowing down to become more present.
Oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. See, I'm so present, I forgot.
It doesn't matter, but it's another more spirals, isn't it, to that? And what I love when you speak of going to India and then becoming an NLP trainer is how you've brought in all of yourself, all aspects of yourself, into how you offer this. Like what I see sometimes that can be quite a masculine way that NLP can be, that you bring in your beautiful femininity, your art, your creativity, your drawings, and your voice to it all, which I really notice with the sessions that I've gone to that you've facilitated. I really notice that. It's wonderful because it's so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. So what about your Irish ancestry? Should we talk about that?
We could do that. I can't remember the details. Go back to my...
Do they want to be spoken about?
It's more that, do you know what it is for me? The sense of, I didn't know that how many people from our ancestry came from Ireland, and it was on both my mum's side and my dad's side. And when I looked at a map of the counties that they came from, it's spread all over. And then to know that they came into Scotland and they mostly were in sort of Glasgow and south of Glasgow area. It fascinated me, although we had a bit of a family joke about it because we did one of these DNA tests, I can't remember what you call it, but the one where you send off the sample and it comes back and tells you what your DNA roots are. And at first it came back and said we were all 50% Irish, and then it was another mix. and my sister had a bit of like Celtic from Central Europe, and she was the only one who was saying, oh, you're the exotic one, and my dad had a bit of Viking. And then it came back later because they continued to refine the data and said, you're not really that Irish at all. And I was like, I am. I am. Look at all these people that and their stories and their names. Even just coming back to someone's name, and my mum has very much honoured that by doing an incredible amount of work with genealogy. So she's got back to the 1700s on both sides of the family, and she has a family tree documented in some programs so we can look at it. And it turned out she and my dad had an ancestor who lived in the same close in Glasgow at the same time. I think it was in the 1800s. So his ancestor and hers were neighbours back then, which I think that's incredible.
That's amazing.
So yeah, the stories, as much as we know of, who they were and where they came from, and sometimes actually they changed their name, maybe because somebody's child joined another family, or a misspelling at one point as well, and I wondered what that was like for them, because we don't have that kind of thing happen nowadays, and so there's a long list of people from all over Ireland, and my mum gave me it for when we were over there. We didn't have the time really to visit. We were only over for a week, but it was nice to know that they all came from there.
Yeah, and that their memories will still be in the land, where they lived as well, which I always think it feels really touching,
Yeah.
Wow. So what does this mean then for your identity? Because it's so interesting, that, isn't it, when you think you're one way, like this many percentage, culturally, and then that changes.
Yeah. Well, with the DNA aspect, that's the scientific part that says that I'm not, mostly sort of British. And I actually go more by who I came from and where I came from, which is, I am, a significant part of me is Irish. My grandma came from the northeast of England, so I have that. I have a hint of French in me as well, and I've always loved languages and stories and words. So it's, for me, it's very much about that, and going with the history. And that was something I really enjoyed about the program I did with you last summer, about returning to where you came from, and you did the Celtic medicine wheel and the different elements and all of that, was hearing the stories of like ancient lore and legend and goddesses of Ireland and all of that. I absolutely loved that, and I felt a connection to it, not just because I enjoyed it, but because that's what the people that I'm talking about would have heard and learned as they grew up as well, I imagine. And it hasn't featured in my family because it's so long ago, and it was nice to come back to it with you.
Yeah, that was another loop in the spiral, wasn't it? What I loved then was the onward connection back to Scotland. Like, I was thinking of the Cailleach witch goddess that we spoke about, and then realizing there's the Cailleach's Hill in the Isle of Skye where you traveled to, and I've been there too, but you go there a lot, don't you? I love that.
And I think I went there a couple of weeks after you talked about that story, and it was practically overlooking the nearest big town where we go to the co-op all the time for bread and milk and stuff like that. It's like that was right there all along, and I didn't realize.
Wow, in plain sight. Wow. And would you like to talk then about your book and your journey with that, in bringing your wisdom, all of who you are, through your journey?
Yeah, that would be lovely. And it's funny because we talked about the number 3 and in various ways, and in triple spirals and so on. What I'd realized, I'd done a fair bit of writing, because sometimes I just wake up in the morning, the words start to flow. So I would start to write, and that's pretty much how I came up with about 50 blogs over 2 or 3 years, say. And some were better than others, some are more significant than others. And when I reached about 50, I thought, you know, I think there's something else here. If I keep writing like this, maybe it could become a book. And it was a bit like what I talked about, the decision to leave and change direction in my career. It was like that, where I realized I've got a book in me. I believe I do. And so I started to write it. And what worked for me was having some shape to it. That the things that I work with, I had three main topics that I wanted to write about, and I had written about before, was resilience. So combining my personal journey with what I've learned professionally to support people with, and my belief that we all have what we need, and it partly comes from NLP, that we already have what we need, and it's just finding ways to connect with that and be able to be resourceful. And the second topic was mindful living, as I would describe it. So mindfulness principles and practices, and also things like, and that's really helped in recent months, when you go out for a walk, notice things with you through the senses, being present and practicing and gently guiding yourself back if your mind wanders, because that's what happens. And I wanted to convey that so that people could feel, you know, we're all human. We're not necessarily perfectly focused or calm or peaceful or whatever we want to be however we want to be at any given moment, but there are ways of doing that. So to me, it was to write it in an accessible way that anyone could pick it up and go, oh, okay, I could try that, or I recognize that I do that. I've had some feedback on the resilience chapter that something I've said, and even the exact sentence in some cases, has resonated with someone, that they then recognize how significant that is in themselves. And that was really what I intended, that I tell a bit about my story in a way that I'm writing it to reach the reader, so that they then have a response to it. And it might come there and then in a moment, or it might come later. I've had two people tell me they've gone back to read it a second time, actually, because they got so much out of it the first time that they've just gone right back to the beginning and started it again. So that's the first two parts. And the third one was about growing through change. So how we can grow and develop and become aware and find more choice in doing what we really want to do as a result of the changes that come along in life. And often the tricky ones are the ones that are not welcome. And again, through personal experience and professional experience. And that was all lovely, having three neat chapters or three neat sections of the book. And then the pandemic came along, so I wrote about that as well. Some of it was fun and lovely to appreciate, things like a choir that I'm in and friendships and all the good stuff. And also a challenging time when I had COVID symptoms last March. And it was pretty scary for a few days because I got worse and worse, and I thought I was going to have to go into hospital. And I just wrote about it all because, to me, I'd already started bearing my soul in other ways in the book. I'm sort of being glib about it now, but that I just felt like that was the only honest way to do it, was to write about how it was. So I documented it as the stages happened, including wondering what would happen if I had to go away in an ambulance, sort of thing. And I wrote about it all. I wrote about coming out the other side of it first time around last summer, as in being able to go a bit further afield. And so it's been a real kind of, some of it's chronological, and certainly on the things that come up most for clients, and encouraging things like playfulness and the lighter side of life, as well as being honest about the things that have been tough. So I feel like it's actually, now I've written it, I feel like it's a legacy to pass on to my kids and to the world as well. It's quite emotional to have brought it out and have people reading it and to hear what they're saying. It's you know, one lady, my mum and dad's friend, is in her late 60s, and she's talked about jumping in a puddle, and I said, go on, I dare you, in the book, and she says she's going to go and jump in a puddle the next time she sees one. I love the thought of that.
That's brilliant. She's waiting for the rain, which won't be long. Yeah, it really is. It is part of your legacy, isn't it? And the way you write as well, because it is through story, which of course I fully resonate with, and that we can take the threads that resonate, that we need to hear in that moment, So I totally get that someone's going back to read another time. And I feel it's the kind of book as well that we can open in one part and read exactly what we need in that moment. So it's both deep, personal. There's so much that you're teaching as well through your language and how you word things, and it's very moving as well, because it is you and your journey with your family too. And there was one line when I opened it, when I first received your signed copy, thank you very much, and I opened it, and I think it was a line that I'll try to find it now, but it was, I am so present with my emotions that it hurts. I think that's the line. I'm going to have to go now and try and find it. That has stayed with me. It's really beautiful. So yeah, thank you for bringing this to form, and we put a link in the YouTube video for this, because it's on Amazon, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And on your website as well.
The website gives a bit of background as to what it's about, so it might be good to link to that, so people get an idea of the summary really of what's in it and why I've written it the way I have, and so on.
Yeah, amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share about that amazing journey from your initial blog?
I did start with one blog that was never meant to be published. I felt really emotional, and it was a cathartic thing to write about my husband's illness and actually how far we'd come between sort of 1997 and the sort of 20 years that followed. And so I wrote and wrote and wrote the words that were just coming out onto the page. And I hadn't intended to send it, but once I read it, I thought this could help people, I think. And I shared it on my personal Facebook page, and within weeks I'd set up a business page and a website, and it was almost like I was being nudged forward to go and make my business a reality, to bring more of that kind of thing into the world. And so I think it conveys the message of being able to be happy and fulfilled and present and mindful, and have choices and have significant challenges, which are there every day. And goodness knows they've been even more present being in the house together for the last few months. And with that in mind, I would encourage anybody who wants to pursue something, whether it's a project like a book or something they want to learn, or whether it's a change in life. I do think that the past year will prompt some people to make bigger changes, and don't hold back because you think it's too big or too difficult. Get the support you need and do it and believe it. And when you know. Yeah, it's like I've said that in the book as well, the wee voice that keeps on calling. If you don't answer it, it will keep on calling. And maybe it's time to answer it.
Yeah, such beautiful advice. And I remember that first, did you share it in work as well? That first blog as part of a course you were delivering.
Yeah.
That's where I may have come across it first, and so moving. So that's so inspiring, that from those words that flowed from you that you weren't going to make public, then from taking those steps to all the blogs you've written, and now to your book, your first book.
Yeah, and the future ones as well.
Yeah. Gorgeous. And I feel like circling back to Newgrange and our wonderful trip there back in the end of 2018, and going to my mum's house and hosting you and our other friend Gay, who you've already mentioned. And before we started recording, you were sharing what that experience brought you by visiting Newgrange and stepping into the chamber again, and the words that flowed.
And having heard about it a few years before, when we were in a training room together, to actually standing there and powerfully noticing what it felt like, what the stories were that the guide was telling us, even to be standing there together, having travelled to go and learn about it, and it was like soaking up the atmosphere of it, and I had such a sense of the ancient nature of, you know, every stone being measured out and put there deliberately, and the symbolism of all of that, and also in the moment having the experience with both of you. So it's like being very present in that exact moment, and also that massive range of like ancient history that had gone before us. And I actually wrote about it. I wonder if I could share that from the book. The words, I woke up the next morning in your mum's house, and the words were there like they had been with the first blog. So I got my phone out and typed them all in because they just flowed, and I wanted to capture it, the experience. So I'll read that now, if that's okay. Yeah. So it was December 2018, actually. That's how long ago it was. Yeah. And I've called it Just Passing Through. Standing here for a moment in one short lifetime, in a sacred place where many were laid to rest, the space and shelter they were given for their passage to the next life, grounded through the earth where ancient people once stood, tracing fingers over the giant stones so carefully placed, marking the movement of the sun streaming in as the solstice comes, eyes resting upon the shadowy carvings, spirals and curves and zigzag patterns, all symbolic of a language now lost, yet somehow still conveying their message through nature's beauty, lyrical sounds of their story being told with hypnotic resonance and wonder, and carried by footsteps tracing their steps around the giant stone circle. Who knows where their passage took them? Their presence is felt deeply here.
Just tingles all over. That's so beautiful. And hearing you read it as well just feels so special. And that those words came from you being in my sister's room in my mum's house.
I'm tucked up with my electric blanket and and the lamp on, and it was so lovely. And that was honestly all part of it. From the moment we met at the airport to go through to get on the plane and come and meet your mum, and even I seem to remember laughing a lot in the hire car trying to find where we were going, and then the more serious kind of really noticing being in the place and it being sacred, and then more laughter afterwards. It was all part of it, and that's one of the reasons why the words flow, because of we were there together.
Yeah, it's the whole combination of that. I love that, the fun, the playfulness, the seriousness, the ancient wisdom flowing through all of that, spiraling with all of that. That's just gorgeous. Wow. Oh, and your publishing, you've called your publisher's Triple Spiral Press, is that right?
Yes. I was originally going to say like Annabelle Books or something like that, but apparently it's better if you choose something that's like a publishing name in its own right. And I'd explored other options, and they weren't available, or they were already taken, if you know what I mean. Then I thought, what do I really want to call it? And it's felt like the experience of writing a book, and even the willingness and I suppose the courage to bring it out into the world and offer it anyway, whatever people think of it, was like the symbolism of the spirals and the kind of spiritual path of having the faith to take steps into the future, and the sort of mind, body, and soul, and that was just what came to me. So, and I've now got that name to publish other books under as well.
Wow. That's amazing. What a beautiful journey, just all across the timeline into this moment. It feels really, really special and powerful. And I know you're helping so many people on their paths as well by being fully who you are. So that's continuing to be inspired. And I can't wait to meet you in person again because we are just kind of over the road.
You could almost not quite shout out the window, but we're only a few miles away.
The kettle's on. The kettle's been on for a while, but yeah, when this current lockdown lifts, hopefully we can meet in person again.
Yeah.
But it's so lovely to connect in this way as well, and to share our conversation with people.
And with you and all the steps that you've taken. And I'm inspired by that, how you follow into wherever your path takes you, and the different types of work you've done and creating through writing and everything you do. I find that inspiring as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share about being Celtic, ancient wisdom for these times?
Really, that it's even reflecting on your sense of self and what influences that. You asking me to take part today in the interview. I thought about what was coming up for me and where I am now in my life, and these things are simple yet powerful ways to explore what's true of you, who you are, and that sense of remembering where you came from and all that's possible when you follow the steps that the path that opens up ahead, and encouraging again for anybody who wants to do something, whatever that call is, to follow it.
Yeah, gorgeous. And where can people connect with you then, Anna?
So my website and Facebook is under Annabelle Coaching. So the link for the book will have the website on it, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Annabelle Coaching. That's probably the best way to get in touch. And I do post things like videos and meditations, and occasionally recently reading from the book, and various things. So and quotes and doodles as well. You can find that on my Facebook page.
Gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing so beautifully today. It's been a real pleasure.
For me, thank you. Thanks for asking.
You're so welcome. And to everyone watching, we'll see you again soon.
See you soon.